This is Sam Piazza interviewing Mr. Tom Bissett on October the 17th, 2009. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine. Thank you, Sam.
Sir, where were you born?
I was born in Jersey Shore, Pennsylvania. I'd be about 4 hours due north of here.
And when were you born?
On November 27th, 1938.
Now, did you and your family move out of Pennsylvania at some point?
Yes, actually, my family moved first to Chicago. My father was in ministry there, pastoral ministry, and then he and my mother decided they would like to go to the foreign mission field and went to Chicago for training. And as it happened, that was during the Second World War. When they got all done their training, they couldn't get their passports.
Oh, okay.
So then they came to Baltimore, and that's kind of how we got into this area.
Now, when did you move into Baltimore?
1945.
Now, did your family move to Carroll County at some point?
Yes, we moved in 1952.
And how long did you live in Carroll County?
I lived there from 52 to 64, although parts of those years I was away at college, but basically that was my home until I got married in 64.
Now, other members of your family also lived in Carroll County?
Yes, my entire family did. In fact, my mother, who died in '06, was the last of our family members who lived on the ranch. So we don't really actually have family members living there anymore. My son, who directs the ranch, is there every day, but he lives in Hunt Valley.
Now, did everyone basically move to Carroll County at the same time, or was it just a coincidence everyone eventually got to Carroll County?
You mean everyone family members?
Your uncles?
Oh, my uncle, Peter and John, never actually lived there, moved there. He was there a number of summers with his family, but that was not his residence. He was a pastor of a church in Baltimore through this entire period.
How did it come about that River Valley Ranch came into existence?
Well, actually, River Valley Ranch was a dream, I guess you would say, of my father principally, but my uncle as well, in a kind of, I would say, very insightful and foresightful understanding of what was coming in the culture, that kids were going to really be struggling, and they both wanted to do something that would be attractive to kids. My father from Scotland, both from Scotland. My father always loved cowboys, and even when he was a pastor in Baltimore, he had a horse. We had a couple of horses in a rented barn, and his vision and his passion was to start this Western ranch and have kids come to it. That was back in the days when the cowboys were big time on TV, you know, Lone Ranger and what have you, and he thought that would attract kids. He understood as a pastor that church was kind of losing its attraction to young people, and I think he looked over the horizon and saw that there would have to be another slightly outside of the box way of reaching these kids, and the camp came out of that.
Now, we're talking about the late 1940s when they start thinking about this?
Yeah, I would say seriously thinking about it in the late 1940s. I can remember going out to that barn where we had these horses, and after we have a great ride, there were a couple other friends who were horse lovers there, and we'd sit around on the bales, actually kneel on the bales, and pray that God would open the way for a Western camp for kids. And lo and behold, it happened.
Were these horses in a barn in Carroll County?
No, that was in Baltimore County.
Okay.
I actually don't know what the connection was to Carroll County, other than that a real estate agent was looking for them and found this farm in Carroll County, which is where we are now.
Because I was going to ask you, why Carroll County?
Yeah, I don't know why they chose. I'm not even sure they chose it. I think they were just looking for something that was right for this camp that they envisioned. And when they saw the farm down in that beautiful valley and the river going through it, and actually there are several rivers that go through there, I think they just knew immediately that it was the place. And so the owner, Mr. Reed, who was a very devout Catholic man with his family there, actually agreed to hold the mortgage for a while to see if it would work out. And yeah, I think the deal was struck for $100. So
For how many acres?
I mean, that was $100 down.
Okay.
And there were 300 acres at that time. It was a farm, slightly run-down farm.
At that point, though, Carroll County was in the middle of nowhere.
Absolutely.
And but your father and your uncle took the chance that they could build a successful camp there?
They wanted to be away from the city. They wanted a place where kids could come out of the city and where they could start paying attention to what was going on there at the camp, and certainly being out there in God's beautiful creation, and that having an effect on this too, and then the ability to have riding trails and raise some crops to feed the horses.
Now this is actually in Manchester, or what they call Manchester now.
It's Manchester Post Office now. It used to be Miller's Post Office, but it's not really even in Miller's. It's closer to Alicia. You know where that is?
Yes.
It's over the hill from Alicia, east over the hill from Alicia. So it's now I still have trouble writing Manchester for River Valley Ranch.
Okay.
Manchester is where I went to high school. I know how far that is from the ranch, but it's not in Manchester.
And you said your uncle was also a preacher?
Yes.
So let me ask you, two preachers decide to do something they've never done before.
Exactly.
To set up this cowboy ranch.
Exactly.
Did they have any experience in doing that?
Well, I think their church experience helped them understand how to do things with kids and how to do things with groups of people. But they had never run a camp before. Believe me, they were as green as grass, and they just went out there. I guess you kind of have to understand them, men of real great passion to do this, as pioneer types are, and just believed that they, with God's help, they could do it. And it was very hard at first, very hard, and came very close to going under.
You were a young teenager
at
the time.
14.
14 at the time when it was actually up and
when
running.
we actually moved there. The first summer we did in '52. We only held some meetings in the big barn. I've got a lot of pictures. I don't know if that's of any value to you, but we had Sunday afternoon meetings in the big barn. And they had a tradition of Sunday afternoon meetings. We did that for a while at the camp, and I think that kind of wore itself out pretty quickly. But they held the meetings in '52, and then in '53 they opened as a camp. So I mean, it was very rough, very rugged.
Well, let me understand this, because you said the farm was not in good shape when it was purchased by your uncle and father.
I would call it somewhat run down. It was. There were a number of homes on the property and buildings, and I'd say the home that the Reed family lived in, which was, 18-something home, a mid-18s triple-story home, actually, was in the best shape. And the other ones, I'm not saying they were run down, but they certainly were not in, prime condition.
Now, by 1953, the Reed family had moved off the premises?
No, they were still there for that year. And then when we were able to get the loan for buying the camp, mortgaging the camp, then they received the money then and moved away.
And that was in 1953?
53.
So
memory serves, 53.
Where did your family live?
There was another home right as you enter the ranch now, the farm then. On the left there was a big, well, it was a white home, and it was probably it probably had 4 bedrooms in it. An old farmhouse, but nice. And it was part of the of that. It was actually a little town called Roller there, and there was a little store and actually a post office before we got there. And the road was dirt until, right up till a year or two before we came in, just gravel. And so we moved into that home. That's actually where I grew up. I lived all my years in that home. Curiously, there's a woman in my church in Baltimore now who also lived in that home, went to school there. There's a little white building that was a school on the property now. It was up the road a bit. So it was, and then right across the street was a big flour mill. run by the Gunpowder River. We had the turbine, and that was all there when we got there. All that building was just full of all this old equipment. We had to clean that out.
Now, you said the funding came from a bank. Was that all the funding came from a bank, or was there, did the church try to raise money to do it also?
No, we raised money as we went along. We tried to raise money all the time. We're still trying. But in order to sign a contract and buy it, we had to have the money. We didn't have it, so we borrowed the money from a bank, I think in either Manchester or Westminster, or may have been Baltimore. I'm not clear on that, but we borrowed the money, and it was $35,000, which today is laughable, but back then it was money, and so that allowed us to take possession of the property, and then of course we were responsible for making those payments. So we did. My father and uncle by this time had a radio program in Baltimore, and that radio program was really the primary source of income for that ranch, for that camping ministry for many years. And slowly the friends of the camp, the constituents, and then the camping fees, which never pay. Camps are like colleges, I guess. The fees never pay. You have to have a constituency that's helping you, and so that combination allowed us to survive, is the only word for it. And of course, as you go along, you get a little stronger and a little wider base of support. And the camp has never ever made money. We're up to about 78% what it costs us to operate, and the rest is made up by friends.
What was the name of the radio program?
It was Peter. It was simply, well, it started as Peter, Paul, and John. Paul left, received a call to a church at just about the time the camp got started. So it started as Peter, Paul, and John, 3 Baltimore pastors who were doing a radio program on the side. Once again, very visionary. That was almost nobody else doing it anywhere. And then it became the Peter and John program, which it became quite well known in the Christian community and church community. Even today, in a little older demographics, a lot of people know immediately what that is.
So the pastors' names just happen to be names of disciples and biblical figures.
Yes, that was just amazing. When they did the audition for the program, they didn't even have a name for it yet. They just went to FBR in Baltimore and auditioned to buy time. And either the manager or the program director or somebody said, "Well, what are you going to call it?" And they looked at each other, and he said, "I have a name for you. How about Peter, Paul, and John?" Well, that was just one step behind Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Yes.
It was only 20 years ahead of its day. So that just stuck, man. That was a winner. So they took that, and that became their corporate name, and they just had the program and called it Peter and John. First Peter, Paul, and John, then Peter and John, and that's what it has been for these many years, known as, really.
And the Peter and John Fellowship Incorporated actually owns the ranch?
The Peter and John Radio Fellowship is the corporate name for our entire ministry. We actually have a radio station, actually 2 radio stations of our own now, WRBS AM and FM in Baltimore. And that was a little later. After the ranch was the first in a series of sort of faith ventures, I guess you would call them, where they had in their original corporate documents that they wanted a camp for kids, a Christian bookstore, and a radio station, and all of that came to pass. We had the bookstore for 25 years, sold it 5 or 6 years ago, and then the radio station came in in 1964. So that's been in existence for many years as well.
Was the bookstore ever located on River Valley Ranch property?
We had just a little one there, but the main bookstore was on Liberty Road.
In Randallstown?
In Randallstown, in one of the strip malls there.
What was it called?
Peter and John Trustworthy Bookstore.
Now let's go back to the origination of the camp. What was the mission the original mission of the camp.
That's exactly the right word, Sam. It was a mission, a calling, and you'd have to appreciate how real that was and how committed my father and uncle were to that sense of calling and mission. The mission was to reach kids. In that day, they thought of like 7 to 17. They had a junior camp and a teen camp, and they thought in terms of mainly the summertime when kids were out of school. But today it's year-round, and their determination was to take the gospel to the kids at a little different level in a way that would be very attractive to them, that they wouldn't have to crawl over a couple barriers to get to the message. And that really did resonate. Horses, to this day, are the key attraction at the camp. Kids and horses humans and horses just go together. And so they had, we had a scraggly bunch of horses and a couple of guys that were half-decent riders and cowboys, if you will, and was very Western-themed then. I mean, my father would not allow you to go around that camp, especially in the summertime, without Western gear on. You came and a place was full of hats and boots. Not quite so much today anymore, but the basic theme is still there.
Now, was that innovative at the time to take a camp atmosphere, which back then I think basically kids come there and just have fun,
right,
and incorporate into that also religious messages?
It was new. This was the first Western-themed Christian camp in America. That's spread all over the world now. You can find them everywhere. So you can see that it by itself was innovative, but to add the message, there were other Christian camps then. Up in Percy Crawford, who was a real pioneer up in Philly, was their inspiration, and he had the Pine Brook camps up there. And so it was not entirely new or unheard of. I'm sure there were church camps that did the same thing that are older than River Valley, but I mean, it was the concept of putting a Western camp in with the gospel was very strange. There were a lot of church people who thought Peter and John had left the planet, lost it or something. And it took a little while to go away, but people quickly saw that this was the real thing, and the kids loved it, and they were going to it and responding to it. So it didn't take long to really become part of sort of the Christian community, largely of Baltimore and the surrounding counties, but once it got into Carroll County, that became a focus for them.
But let me just understand, at first, was it a day camp or was it an overnight camp?
It was immediately an overnight camp. They never had day camping. Strangely enough, just last summer we initiated day camping as part of what we do. But they had the concept of a camp where kids came for 6 weeks. Actually, or 6 days. Actually, it was 7 to start. You came on a Sunday and you left on a Sunday. It's a little different today, but it was a residential camp. Parents came and left their kids there, and we had dorms or bunkhouses or facilities in this old mill, and we had platform tents, and we had some rooms in barns. I mean, it was very rough at the outset.
Was there a chapel there too at the time?
The barn was the chapel at first, but by 54 we had built what we called the Tabernacle, which is now called the OTM, the Old Town Meeting House, and that still exists today. That's still at the center of the camp. We still use that for meetings, but for other things as well, and it's been sort of remodeled a little bit.
At first, were both your father and your uncle trying to attract poorer kids to the camp? And how did they charge the kids at first to come to the camp?
Yeah, actually they did charge. From that day to this, we've always been underpriced, but that was a basic philosophy of ministry for my father and uncle, that they should not price this camp. They may not price this camp beyond what middle America kids and down could come. There are high-end camps even today, high-end Christian camps. that these kids that come to River Valley Ranch couldn't go to. They just simply can't afford that. But they always wanted the camp to be affordable, and so that price wouldn't be a barrier for kids coming in, having a great week at camp, and enjoying that and hearing the gospel there.
Now, did you attend the camp, or did you work at the camp?
I did both and more. I worked. I mean, immediately when we got there, all of our family just went to work cleaning, and my mother. I mean, it was unbelievable when I think about it. That old mill had dirt within a foot of the ceiling. I don't know how it got in there, but the basement of it. And we cleaned that all out, made that the dining room. So we were all just working, and I guess felt we were part of the vision of what was happening. And then I eventually got into working in the summer times. Fairly shortly, I began to work in the camp, everything from taking the tractor and wagon and taking the garbage out to eventually being a camp counselor and then a director of the junior camp. That was the last real activity I had there, and I had just been married at that point. So,
how long were you a director of the camp?
I was only the director of the younger camp for about 3 years, and then they brought others in. I was working at the radio station at the time, so it was kind of double duty for me. But I couldn't keep doing that. So they have like today. They bring in counselors from colleges and mostly Christian colleges, but they go into some of the other schools and find kids that are really committed Christians, and they come. But they find the right kids for camp, the directors of the camp. And then my son is the executive director of the camp, so he's responsible for them. But
now, you touched on this a minute ago, but with that first $35,000, that was not enough to hire contractors that come in and fix up the camp.
Oh, no.
So how did you get this camp together and ready within that 1 year period?
I don't really know how we did that, but we had some volunteers, some volunteers from both my father's church and my uncle's church that came those first couple of years. Some were just wonderful, and to this day they still come by and help out once in a while, friends. But we did all that ourselves. We went in the woods and cut the trees down and took them up to the sawmill up around the corner, rolled them up on a wagon, got them sawed up. Old Delton Schaefer had a Schaefer Mill Road, had a sawmill up there, and just took the wood down there. And I don't know why all the buildings just didn't fold up from the green wood, but there they are. We cut that wood, and the posts in the Tabernacle Old Town Meeting House. You go in there; those came right out of our woods.
So you used that to build the building, not to generate income.
No, we didn't. We didn't generate income from it. We had materials given to us, and you can come there today and look at elements of the main part of the teen camp. It's now, what's it called now? Anyhow, it's for the older kids and where most of the guests come. That front facade that's very Western looking, you go along, I can show you chunks of windows and so on that came in those first few years and are still there.
And you and your family helped build those buildings.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we did. I mean, we had a couple of people who were handier than. My family was never real good with carpentry and that. They were always good at writing and speaking and evangelizing, but for some reason the gene for carpentry is real high in our family.
Now, did the mission change for the camp over the years, or has it stayed the same since 1952?
Well, I like to tell people that's a very good question, Sam, because in anything, and especially Christian ministry, as you make changes, people begin to get nervous and feel either left out or feel that something's going wrong here because they are not in the middle of what needs to be changed and so forth. And I can say without any sense of hesitation personally that our mission is unchanged to present the gospel to these kids. And our message is unchanged. We know what it is we're saying, but the methodologies have changed. And today the camp is different in that sense. In those days we offered one thing, a Western camp, horses, and then some activities that the kids did in the morning or whatever it was, and we had a swimming pool. But today, my son has moved the camp to what they call in the camping field decentralized camping, where you have skateboard camp and you have outdoor camps and all, 4 or 5 different camps that attract their own little groups, and also take part in the what we call classic camp, the horse thing. So they all get a piece of it, but there are kids that come there more for the skateboarding than skateboarding and horses, but the skateboarding is a part of that appeal. So that was done really because camping, if you will, camping has gone through a period when it's slightly out of style. When you and I grew up, you went to camp in the summertime, and that's not true anymore. Kids do a dozen different things, from working to whatever. So we've had to really work hard to recruit. In camping, you have your clientele for about 2 or 3 years, and then you need to have a continuous supply of new kids coming in. So it's been really trying to be visionary about how to do that, and how to get kids in there, and how to get the camp full for purposes of operating and full for purposes of ministry.
So although the world changed around you, your central mission stayed the same.
It has stayed the same.
However, you had to adapt, for example, to the technology that kids use nowadays. Is that part of what some of these mini camps are as part of the larger camp?
Yeah, they're part of the camp. There are probably some old timers who would say, "What does skateboarding have to do with a ranch?" Well, it is part of what we're doing. In their day, they would have gone out in the field and played softball after dinner. Today, our kids are skateboarding in the morning instead of playing softball or making little leather things in the shop or whatever. So it's still River Valley Ranch. The mission is unchanged, the message is unchanged, but the methods, the methodologies are definitely changed. Stylistically, it's changed. I mean, the kids that came to camp in the 50s were restrained in what they could and couldn't wear. They still are. We still have dress codes and everything, but in those days, we just had you had to dress up to go to church at night, including girls wearing skirts and dresses at a camp, and that was true of other camps back in that day. But my son was the first to say, "We're just putting up barriers to these kids, telling them to come there, and the kids are wearing jeans to church, and that's church almost anywhere." But that's change in the culture, that if you don't adapt to that, you're going to have a real struggle to exist.
Now, is the camp meant for only a 1-week experience, or do some of these kids come there for the entire summer?
At the beginning, they came for 2 or 3 weeks, or even a couple of kids just got parked there for the summer, which probably wasn't the best thing, but a lot of those kids were profoundly affected by that, positively. But most of the kids that come today stay for a week, and in fact, I think there's a state law, or is it a county law, where they can't stay. They can't stay over the weekend. They have to go home and break there. So we have kids that come for 2 weeks, but they're not sequential, or they can be, but you have to go and come. So we don't have any of the long-term campers anymore in terms of, here's a check for 4 weeks. We're going on vacation, take care of our kids,
Oh, so that makes it even harder for you to generate people coming and going through the camp.
Yeah, every week you have to have kids that you have recruited, if you will, encouraged, invited to come to camp.
Is the camp then almost like a play? You have 3 acts to it, to be the first act, second act, a third act, and it leads to, at the end, beginning you start teaching something, at the end you finish the teaching of something.
Yeah, I'm not sure the play is the right word, but there is a sequence to what they're doing now, especially, and it was true then. It wasn't quite as intentional then, but by the time you got toward the end of the week, you really had an understanding as a camper of what the gospel was and what it called for, in terms of response to it. And that could be a decision that was made early in the week or later in the week. But today, they have a little more intentionality to the way they bring the kids to that point where they're really going to start addressing what they have to, what response is asked for, invited for. So they start with a fun night. On the first night they come, they just have this big wild and crazy night in the gym, and I mean, it's all under control, but the kids just often you'll hear the kids coming in perhaps under duress from their parents or something, and you'll hear the kids saying, "This place is pretty cool." You know, on a first day, well, that's exactly what you want. You want the kids feeling comfortable right away. Down the barriers come. The second day, things start getting a little more focused. And by the third day, they're really talking to these kids. All along, the counselors are working with them and connecting with them. But by midweek, by Wednesday, this is from this day on. It's fine if kids want to get serious spiritually in the first 2 days. That's fine with us. But by this day, we want something. We are purposeful about this. And then by the next couple of days, you want these kids to know what this is really about. They do when they come, most of them, but sometimes you have kids that come there that are ever see that TV program, Cash Cab? They're like, what is it? But we try to, I mean, the younger generation of leaders in camping today are very aware of what's going on with kids. They've been trained, they understand. I mean, in my father's day, it was just like, well, we know what kids want. They want to have a good time and ride horses, and then fundamentally that was right. And you can go back to those kids and they'll say, yeah, I had a great time at camp. But now I mean, these kids come there and they're not allowed to bring their boom boxes. They're not allowed to bring their cell phones or their radios. That we just want them to let that go for a week. And here you are at the camp to have another kind of experience. So, but they know that these kids, they know where they are and how to address their needs and interests.
So do you think the kids in the last 50 years are still seeking the same things, but the world has changed around them?
Yep. I have no question about that. I think the essential longings of the human heart and mind are unchanged. They've been deeply influenced by television in particular, very pervasive influence on kids, and they've got the wrong idea about what life is. But way down deep, you dig beneath all the problems that our kids are facing today, be it drugs or violence or whatever it is, you will find that longing for love and that longing to be accepted, even a longing for some boundaries to their life so they have somebody that's they can look to, how should I make this decision, or which way should, that down underneath it all, that's there. And we know that is a fact. We know that's what the Scripture teaches us about human beings, that they're all the same and created in the image of God. And so, I mean, they're different now. They're much more worldly wise. I mean, these kids that come now, it's like thinking back to the school in the 50s. Back in those days, the problems were chewing gum and talking in class and, you name it. Now it's like the problems are getting shot and killed in school. I mean, that's just, or drugs, so I mean, everything just keeps moving like that. So we understand that, but we're not going to cave to that. We think we can find we can touch the spot, the thing they want.
Does that make the mission harder now than it was in the 50s?
I think the world is more complex, and I think kids are certainly more mature at their age. They say 12 going on 17 as a joke, but it's kind of more like that. And I'd say back in those days, you didn't have to contend with as much anxiety, and you didn't have as much intellectual doubt. There was more consensus in the culture. You don't have that consensus anymore, so you have to go by a lot of things before you can really start, making the message connect with the kids. So yeah, it is harder today. You have to know more about what you're doing.
Let's talk about how the camp physically has changed and the activities have changed since the 50s. Now, you start with 300 acres, but today you have 500 acres.
Right.
When did you purchase, or did you purchase in parcels?
Parcels, yeah. We had, there were some adjoining farms, and along the way, farmers would come to us and actually ask if we were interested, and if only they knew how, yeah, it's amazing. There's a little 12 and 15 and 20 acre farms with homes on them that abut the ranch, and my father's perception was that the day would come that if we didn't have enough property, we wouldn't be able to use the horses. That people would just come and do that to us. So he begged, borrowed, didn't steal, but did all the other stuff. And just every time there was a place that we could get, we did. And back in that day, we bought the farm next to us, I think for $11,000. I know it's, and a few others, and it kind of wound up being that. And the amazing thing, of course, we do farming, which is part of the ministry too. I mean, the Bible is, Old and New Testaments are just full of analogies to the earth and the growing of seeds and life coming up from the earth, and we see that as all these kids that come in as workers go out there in the fields and work and so on. So, see, what was your question?
Oh no, that's fact. You physically have grown up from 300 to
yeah.
500 acres, and you're saying that's because you wanted the room for the horses to be able to roam.
That was the principal motivator, to make sure that in a day in the future, when he was gone, or they were gone, there would be enough land to operate this camp. And now we're using most of it. We have Arrowhead Woods, which is a teepee Indian-themed camp, and we have the Fort Roller up on the hill now, and back in the woods where there was nothing but woods in that day, and cookouts and camping out and all that. We don't have to go off property to do all the things all the activities that we do.
When did you move from just a purely summer camp to a year-round facility?
We started doing that a number of years ago. I would say even in the late 60s, we were having weekend retreats, providing the facility for church groups. And we would just take whatever churches wanted to come. We'd provide the food, and they'd do their programs.
That was for adults or for teenagers?
That was for adults as well as teens, yeah. Youth groups. And I'd say in the last 10 years, we've become very progressive and aggressive in trying to fill the camp year-round. I mean, it is a large facility, and you can do about as much with it as you're able. And so we have just tried to utilize the place more, good stewardship, I guess we would call it, and create continuing growth in sources of revenue, which is something that's always an issue for camps, and has been for us as well. So,
what type of activities do you do other than summer camp?
Well, we provide activities for groups that come, that outdoor school. We have this. Forgive my blank mind at this moment, but the training program where a company would come and climb up walls and work through things together. What's the word?
Oh, it's a way to have them work together,
Yeah.
and meet the same challenges and work as a group together.
Yeah, and there's a name for that, and we also have we have these big zip lines, and that's part of what these people come there for too. The people that come often find that they're afraid of things, and they're afraid to try something new, climbing up a tree and going across a wire up there, or climbing up this thing and getting on a zip line and going a couple hundred yards flying through the air. I haven't done that yet. I don't know if I can. But I mean, all of these things have been incorporated into what we can do for groups. We can do it for your group if you come as a church. We can do it if you're just coming for a day or an overnight or whatever. But the idea, of course, is to be there and serve people that have needs. Everybody that comes there knows what it is. It's a Christian camp, and they know what our parameters are in terms of what they may and may not do. Obviously, it's not a party town, and so people know that. That's up front, and it's never been a problem for us.
You have thematic things too, such as what I don't know if it's called Halloween or fall fest
we
activity.
have Maze Fest, which was supposed to happen today until this rainstorm came. We depend on Maze Fest as a place where parents can bring their kids and they just have a great time, but also we depend on the revenue that comes from Maze Fest. So the Lord saw fit to give us a little rain today. I'm going to say thank you.
Because you grow pumpkins on the ranch also?
No, actually the pumpkins, if you can imagine, are given to us.
Okay.
And then they come and we're able to sell them for probably a little less than market value, but we try not to, and we're not supposed to sell them at backbreaker prices for everybody else. Just we're sort of in the same range. So,
do you also have something around the Christmas holidays there, especially?
We do not. I mean, the place is decorated up a bit for Christmas, and we have Christmas parties for groups that come. We will have occasional wedding there and so on. But the main off-season, I mean, coming for horseback or chuck wagon breakfast or dinner, horseback rides, that's themed along the Western line. It is Western. And these other things, if they don't really, I suppose, care if you come wearing a cowboy hat or not. Just get us up on the trees or down the zip line, or they even come to use a skateboard camp. Kids come. We do have just remember, we have a skating expo in the spring for kids. That's a whole culture by itself. We're trying to reach into that culture, and they have these Christian professional skaters that come, and they share their faith with these kids. They do all these wild and crazy things. Kids know them already from television. The first one we did had 500 kids came there, and then the second one we did had 700 kids, and we had to stop doing that because we couldn't even manage that.
You have what do you have? I don't know even the name for it. You have a skating park.
Yeah, we have a skating park.
What's it, skating bowls they're called, or
skate? I don't know what they're called either. We've actually three of them in the same area. The original one, and then there's others with all the various. I don't know whatever they're called. But the kids in the summer use it, and then church groups come and use it. Once we even had a little motocross thing in our rodeo arena. The church put it on. That was a step too far. That's a little too dangerous for us, really.
So you never thought of actually holding like a skateboard competition, which is very big in this country now.
Yeah, you mean for kids?
For kids or for professionals to come out and do skateboard competitions.
I don't know if that conversation has been had. I'm sure the idea is floating around somewhere, but to this point we haven't done it.
What would you say have been the successes of River Valley Ranch in the last 50 years? If you had to name the top 3 successes.
Well, I think I'd put right at the top, obviously in concert with our mission there, that there have been a lot of changed lives. A lot of kids come there messed up and go away different, changed by the message of the gospel, and live their whole lives and raise their families and their children and their grandchildren. And you can find them all over Maryland now, the ripple effect of the camp. And I would call that probably our signature success.
Let me ask you this. Did you have an experience with a young person back in the 50s or 60s, and 20 or 30 years later you had the opportunity to meet up with that person again?
That happens all the time.
And you've seen that they're living a good life?
Absolutely. These people go, I mean, not everybody. Obviously, I don't think you're going to have everybody that comes to camp and makes a confession of faith in Christ that are going to be totally on message for the rest of their lives, but I can tell you that most of these kids, there are missionaries and there are pastors out there and there are Christian families and individuals whose lives were profoundly changed at the camp and have gone away and carried that and come back, you know, and then finally they're gone from us, and some of them haven't been around for years, but every Saturday we are open to the, not every Saturday now, it's every other Saturday. We have these rodeos, and I'm just bumping into people, you know, from years ago, and there they are. They're still walking the walk and talking the talk.
Any other successes that you can think about?
I would say probably the success that the camp has really become a part of Carroll County and accepted by all the neighbors. And at first they were a little doubtful about what we were trying to do there, and you know, and express that too. And now our neighbors are our friends in the county. We are part of that problem because my father and uncle had a mildly adversarial relationship with the world. They were separate from the world. That was their deep understanding. And so we did spend some years kind of staying back from Carroll. I mean, we did all the things the county wanted, and we always had good relationships with the inspectors and what have you. But now we really, in fact, this interview grew out of the fact that we are now involved in something else that my daughter got connected with. So we are not only happy to be part of the county, and we show up in state as well. I think county publications as a place to visit, and we've become really a part of the county, and I'm very happy about that. I'm happy to move past the idea that somehow the county might try to restrict us doing our ministry, and that was always a deep fear. It was never, I mean, when there were free food programs, my father said, okay, but we have to be careful because they'll have us doing their program. And sure enough, in the first summer, that was a federal thing. In the middle of the summer, we were required to fill out these things, and at that point, my father just pulled the plug on that. And so, I mean, you could see that as one reason why we were standoffish a bit, but we're past that. I'm happy about that. I'm happy to be part of the county in the sense that there are people here still don't know about River Valley Ranch in Westminster or parts of the county.
So that was one of your challenges too, the challenge to try to incorporate your mission into the governmental requirements.
Well, yeah, we had to do that.
Right.
But we have felt that we have been hard to get to know by the county, and they've told us that eventually as we became friends. And friends of ours who were in the county system said, people have got the wrong idea about what you're doing. So I'm just happy that that's something that's passed now. And so I'd consider that a success and achievement that I'm very pleased about. And I guess just to have a beautiful facility there that we can use to accomplish our mission. I mean, Sam, that is a gorgeous place. I love that place and the land and what's been done with it. It's beautiful. We take care of the grounds and people come there, and it's this beautiful place where they can come with their families and have a picnic, and you know, and so I mean, to me, that's the package right there. If you want 1, 2, 3, I guess there are others, but I would say those are the 3 ones that I'd be most pleased about.
Of course, you've had some challenges too, especially recently with a major flood you had this summer.
Yeah, we've had a couple of floods. We had Agnes. Agnes really hurt the ranch more than this flood did because the dam broke at Agnes and all that backed up water came rushing through.
And that was in 72.
72. This flood was actually more severe. In fact, the county, now our friends from Resource Management came out to look around and talk with us, I guess, hold our hand or something. But we welcomed them to come, and they told us that this was a 1,000-year flood. And we were like, oh boy, no more floods. And it doesn't work like that. You could be at the end of the first 1,000 years and at the beginning of the second 1,000 years. So I mean, it was kind of like cautious cautious encouragement for valley dwellers or something from the county. But it was a mess. We had a silver lining. That was all the volunteerism, all the people today. Today there are people there working in this weather, and we've had. I mean, in that first week, we just had hundreds of people come and clean it up. So much so that 1 week after the flood, it was clean. The buildings were clean enough to hold our first retreat. In Agnes, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have all this social networking, and all the friends that we have now. And it was a wonderful and humbling thing to see all the people you've been trying to help suddenly back at you, you know. It was just rushed in there to help us and called us. And friends from all over the country who saw this thing on YouTube and all these other social networking sites and our own website were just deeply moved and have sent support for us. It's just been truly the silver lining behind a cloud. So,
did the flood destroy any buildings, or was just so much debris pushed into the camp?
Yeah, it was debris was everywhere. I mean, everything that stood up that didn't get knocked down had debris, you know, this high. And then we lost a home completely, and we lost the building, the storage building that went with the home. The county, bless their hearts, have come to say that they would try to help us speed up the permits program, and that we could just go up the hill and build its replacement up on this hill, right where it was, but not down in the floodplain. The whole valley is actually a floodplain, and then, you know, it got in all the buildings, and not all the, many of the buildings, and up come the carpet, and, you know, the water, and if the wood in these buildings is ruined. I mean, that flood, they have the graph of that flood. We have these devices in the river. We're cooperating with the county on that. They're testing the river quality, water quality, and that also shows what the river does when it does it. And you can see it. They gave us the graph where it's going like this, and all of a sudden it goes like this, and then for about 5 hours it's up here, and then it just goes straight down.
So that was within like 24-hour period.
The reason it was a 1,000-year flood is because 15 inches of rain fell in 24 hours, not right on the camp, but all around, all those feeder streams, and that was part of it, and all the ground was soaked. So this graph shows what we experienced. We had people in the house that got ruined, just got out in time by a phone call from somebody else seeing this come, and that river was over its banks by then. That's 3.5 feet, and then it went up 6 more feet in an instant. So it was like 9 to 10 feet of water that came through there. So it was a mess. And if you went there today, you would wonder what happened. You know, it's that fixed up already. So we just are very grateful for all of that.
Even with that, though, you have some fundraisers going on, including the Run for the Ranch.
Yes.
At the end of this month.
Yes, we have friend of the ranch who we already have a run every August after camp closes, and that's been very very well received. And that's in conjunction with an official running organization. Can't think of the name.
But 800 people?
Yeah, we had 800 people this year. It's just been doubling every year.
Is it a 5K or is it a marathon?
It started out as a 3K and a 5K. Last year it was a 3K. It was a 5K, or what was it, 5 and a 10, or maybe there was a short run for the kids, and the guys come and run all over the hills, you know, it's crazy. But and then this person called up and said, I want to organize a run for the ranch. All proceeds will go to the relief fund, the flood relief fund. So we don't have insurance for the flood insurance. You might as well try to save your money and hope for 1,000 years. You know, we looked at it again, and
it's very expensive for floodplains.
It was beyond us. And I mean, we might be able to squeak it out now, but we've probably got $180,000 to $200,000 losses there, and you know, repair and refurbish and rebuild. But we have received to this date about $120,000 from people just giving, and I mean we haven't done any more and say we need your help with the relief fund, and that shows all of the friends turning around and say, here you are, thank you for everything. So yeah, it's been It's been a wonderful experience, and we get the run coming up, and people continue to give. So
That's October 31st.
31st, yeah.
Do you now draw mostly still from Carroll County residents and businesses, or is it expanded beyond that?
Are you talking about the kids?
The camp, altogether, the adults coming for businesses, for the kids, for the camps?
Actually, Carroll County is probably not the biggest source of campers and people. It's more so now than ever. That's part of what I was talking about earlier. And again, that's partly our fault. But we have received, most of our campers have come more in the suburbs of the city, and that's where the population has been anyhow. But now all the Hartford and Carroll and Frederick and Baltimore and the city, these are our main sources of campers and supporters and friends. I mean, it's mostly all of that.
How has Carroll County changed in the last 50 years, and do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing, or it's a mix?
Yeah, it's probably a mix. I would say it has changed basically because when we came to the camp in '52, that was really rural there. I mean, you were out there. That road had just been paved, wide enough for about a car and a half, a year or two before we got there. Paved meaning paved, and it was gravel before that. In fact, till the last 10 years, it was gravel still farther on Great Run Road. And there was very little traffic. I mean, today it's just like everywhere else out in the suburbs. The suburban areas are just, and to me, I think sort of, well, everybody would like to live out there in this beautiful place, you know, and as long as it doesn't turn into a zoo, I think everybody's certainly welcome to come, and we try to help our neighbors. We try to do the things, but we have work staff that comes in. We go out in the summertime with this and go do good deeds for people. You know, your woman's husband died, and we get in there and clean her whole place up and mow everything down. That goes ongoing, and so I can't argue with people wanting to move to Carroll County. If they want to come, it's beautiful, and why wouldn't you want to live there? So I guess I would say it is a mix. I don't like all that traffic going through the middle of camp. That has scared us for years. And I mean, thank God nobody's ever been hit. No horse has ever been hit.
So there's a public road going through the camp?
Public road, yeah. And we have strict rules about people not walking on the road, but when our friends come on Saturdays, they can't keep them off the road. You know, they think it belongs to the camp, they walk on it. So I feel for the county there because our neighbors, you know, they scream, get these people off the road, I can't drive through here. And we do our best, believe me. We have posted people to keep the kids off and visitors off, but we're okay with a suburban Carroll County. I hope it doesn't get too more suburban, but it's fine.
Well, sir, thank you for your time today, and thank you for coming in and spending some time with us.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate it.